it's still showing me this error. Why? Because I have to specify the context. So for that, let me configure the context. Now if I config, you can see that the new config is set. But even if we try to get notes, it's still showing me that because we have to specify the current context. So every time when the kubectl try to interact with, or anytime we type or run the kubectl command, the kubectl command will go to the config file and then go to the current context where we define which cluster this current user will interact with. So I have to run this command to define the current context. I will paste it here, right? And now if I try to get notes, this time does not show me this error, but showing me to enter the name of the user and the password, and then they will tell me that this unable to connect to the server, certificate signed by unknown authority. So now what you are going to do is copy that and paste it here, right? And run it. So now if we try to type the kubectl config view, now our certificate added here. But even if we try now to interact with, sorry, I have done a mistake here. I have certs instead of copy and paste that here, like kubectl view kubectl git node. It's still telling me that because I have, if I try to list that, okay, so they have to do is change mode so 404 certs ls-l. Now if I try to read that, permission denied. So what I have to do is sudo change mode now unable to connect to the server, certificate signed by unknown authority. So if we type kubectl config view, this cluster does not have a certificate authority, right? Only the user that have that certificate. But how this IP server will know that this certificate, right? What is the certificate authority you have used? So we have to provide them with that. So for that, let me scroll down here, production, then Kubernetes, sorry, certs, and then scroll down here, copy that and paste it here. I type kubectl, git notes. So error from server, forbidden node is forbidden user AppData cannot list resource node in IP group. We try type git pods AppData is forbidden. So what we should do now? We don't still see this error. So it means that everything we have set it everything properly. But what we have to set now else is something called the role based access control. So what this means, what this role based access control is, the first thing, there is authentication and there is authorization. So this user, we have authenticate this user to get to our cluster, but we have not authorized him to do anything yet. So to authorize him to interact with our resource, we have to create for him a specific thing, call it the role based access control. So for that, I have to create a role for that user. So copy. So I have to go to my switch back to my admin to the user who is the administrator of the cluster. And then here I will create nano role workload.yaml and then paste that here. So we create a role and we have to bind that role with this user that's called head. So for that you have to create copy, and then we have to create a role binding. So create file, call this role binding.yaml. So paste that here, right? So first thing I have to do kubectl apply -f role workload, and then the role binding. So once this role binding are created, if I try now to switch to my user AppData, and if I type now kubectl git pods, now I am able to get that pod, but only the pods. If I try to get deployments, they will show me an error. Kubectl deployment, and it will show me an error because I cannot reach this resource. So I hope that you have understand well what is the role-based access control. So the next thing is the service account. So the service account, let me give you an example. Let me keep these shapes here and tell you what is okay. What is the service account? So this is your cluster, Kubernetes cluster, and then you want to create a web application that will take information from your Kubernetes cluster, like how many pods, deployment, services, namespace, etc. So